What's up guys, HCZ here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today I wanted to show you a different version of Sprite because we already covered the most generic build of the deck, which is with Rogues and Totally Awesome, but some people might be wondering what happens if Toad gets banned like it did in the OCG, or what happens if I don't want to play the deck that everyone else is going to be playing, but I still want to play Sprite. Then I've got the deck just for you because there's one more version of the deck that you can play that has a lot of synergy with the deck because of how the two archetypes function, being level 2 and being spammy, which is basically what both decks do. So today we're presenting to you an Evil Twin Sprite deck profile, which is a deck that, even though I don't think it's as powerful as the Froghead deck, this deck is still a deck that can catch people off guard. It can utilize a win condition that the normal Sprite deck cannot, and it's really fun to play as well. So before we begin, if you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get the deck profile. So starting off with the Sprite monsters, pretty standard. We have 3 copies of Sprite Blue. This is the one that searches you a monster on summon. All the Sprite monsters, they can be special summoned from the hand if you control a level or rank 2 monster. These cards are really good, the extenders, because you do play a starter engine that is basically very similar to like playing Deep Sea Diva or Nimble Beaver in the deck, because the Live Twins just do the same thing. They get you a level 2 from the deck, and then you can summon all these guys from your hand and get their effects off, so you can go plus. We play 3 copies of Sprite Jet. This is the one that searches you a spell or trap on summon. It searches you either another extender or it searches you a card that will play for as a form of removal or disruption, so you do have really good targets depending on your needs. And for the one-offs, we play 1 copy of Sprite Red. Usually I would be playing like 2 copies of each, or 2 copies of red and one of the next one in a normal Sprite deck, but in an Evil Twin version, I don't think you need to play more than 1. You just play them so you can play around hand traps like Ogre, like Ash, and the Carrot to play around Imperm, because you can get access to these whenever you want with starter, or search them with Blue and then summon them. Just 1 of each to be able to protect your plays. We also play 1 copy of Sprite Red. We also play 1 copy of Sprite Carrot. It's the one that negates spells and traps by tributing another monster, and both of these, if you tribute a rank or a link to, you can negate and destroy that card effect as well. And it's really good in this particular deck because in a normal Sprite deck, you don't want to tribute your gigantic Sprite, because if you tribute it, it won't be able to detach, so it's not going to special summon from the deck. But in this particular deck, when you're going to have other monsters on the field, like a Kisigil or Lila of the Link 2s on the field, then you can tribute them to basically also destroy the card you're going to be negating. And this is really good going second. Going first, when you're negating hand traps, it doesn't matter too much, but going second, when you're trying to negate your opponent's established board, being able to destroy the cards as well is really important, which is another plus that this deck has instead of playing the OG version, because you do have more link monsters you don't really need to keep on the field, just because with their own effects you can keep bringing them back from the graveyard to get even more pluses. So in some scenarios, tributing them is even better than keeping them on the field. Now for the twin engine, we play 3 copies of Kisikil. Now both of the twins we play as 3 of that special summon from the deck. When they're summoned, you special summon a Kisikil or a Lila, depending on which one you summon. They summon the counterpart from the deck by not having any other monsters on the field. And the deck does have extenders of its own as well, so it's not like you need to have sprites in your hand if these cards get ashed or veilered, because you do have a card that basically searches you any of the monsters, and 2 of the monsters are extenders if you have the counterpart on field. So yeah, these cards work very similarly to sprites, being able to get you your advantage, and the extra deck plays these cards can do are really good because of some niche interactions with some broken cards that are still in the meta for some reason. For the same reason, we play 3 copies of Lila. Kisikil summons Lila, Lila summons Kisikil. Both these cards work in tandem. Usually you're going to be summoning the extenders from the deck because they do have some graveyard effects that you can use in order to get some advantage, because summoning the normal counterpart doesn't give you any value because they are not going to get their effect to summon another monster, because in order to do so you would need to have no other monsters on the field, and you're going to because you summon them from another monster's effect. So yeah, these cards are the 3 ofs that you're going to be normal summoning. You're getting your plus prof, and even if they get negated, the next 2 cards are basically the ones that you're going to be searching with your spell card to make sure that your plays go off. So we play 1 copy of Live Twin Kisik Frost. She's the best one. She's the extender that you can summon when you have Lila on the field, and if she's in the graveyard, she basically gives you a 1-time shared right. When your opponent searches, you can banish her from the graveyard and you're going to draw a card. So yeah, a shared right just for once. It's a decent effect. It's basically a free card, so why wouldn't you play that? So even if you don't get negated when you summon Lila, you don't want to summon the LG Kisikil from the deck. You want to summon this card, so when it goes to the graveyard, you can get the free plus. And we also play 1 copy of Live Twin Lila Treat. She's the one that you can summon once you have Kisikil on the field. Her graveyard effect is not that great. It basically means that when your Evil Twin battles and you take damage, then your opponent monster will lose attacks equal to the damage. So it's not a great effect, but it's still something that can sometimes come up in niche scenarios. Not nearly as good as Kisikil, but it's a card that has a graveyard effect compared to the OG counterpart, which has no graveyard effect. So you're going to summoning this card from your deck with Kisikil once she resolves. Now, the last real monster in the deck is the 1 copy of Artifact Scythe. So yeah, this deck, we all know that Evil Twins can utilize this card very easily because the Evil Twin Lila can pop a card on the field once she's summoned, so you can summon her from the grave with Kisikil, and then after you you summon Dagda during your previous turn, you set up this card, you pop it, and you get the Scythe look. But even if this card ends up getting banned in the list, it doesn't matter too much. It's not something that's completely necessary for the deck in order to function. It's a deck that has disruptions of its own. I mean, it's Sprite, come on, it does have a lot of ways to play, and even without Toad, even without Scythe, the deck would still be able to play, so don't be afraid to play this card in your deck feeling that it's not going to be playable next ban list if this card leaves, because for now, we're using it because we have it, but even if we don't have it, the deck is still going to be really, really powerful. Now, this is Sprites, so we're playing a lot of hand traps in the deck because the amount of combos you can do with just the rank 2 is absurd, so we're playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom because she's the most generic one, 3 copies of Effect Veiler, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre. I mentioned a lot in the previous videos that Ghost Ogre is going to be amazing in the following format because the adventure package is still at full power and it's really good at stopping Gigantic Sprite because if you remove it from the field, they don't have anywhere to attach from, so they're not going to be able to summon from the deck, so this card is really, really good in the upcoming format. And 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. If you feel like you're playing against a lot of decks that can get hit by Nibiru, then you can main deck Nibiru. If you feel like Diddy Crow is really good because you're playing against a lot of tier elements, then depending on your matchup and your format, then you can adjust your hand traps. I feel like the ones you should be playing are Ash and Ogre. These are the ones that give you the most value at generic hand traps. This format, Veiler and Imperm, depending on your matchups, those 6 you can substitute with pretty much any hand trap you like or any other go second hand trap you like. If you want to play cards like Talents, or if you want to play cards like Ultimate Slayer, or maybe even Forbidden Droplet, depending on what you need, you can switch these cards with any go second card you like. For the spells, we have 3 copies of Sprite Starter. This card is the card that summons a monster from the deck. It's searchable with Sprite Jet. It's a quick play. It's a really, really good card. We play 1 copy of Sprite Smashers. This is the card you're going to be searching with Jet when you don't really need Starter or you already have Starter. So by banishing a Sprite monster from your hand or your graveyard, you're going to banish both 1 level, rank, or link 2 monster you control and 1 card your opponent rolls. And because this card is a quick play, you can use it offensively, you can use it defensively during your opponent's turn. It has really good utility for the deck, so I don't see a reason why you want to play this card. We play 3 copies of Live Twin Sunny Snitch. Now, this is the card that basically searches you, your Live Twins, but the thing about this card is that it wins games in time, which is another advantage that this deck holds over the OG Sprite deck, because Sprite Starters, unfortunately, it burns you depending on the monster you summon. It deals you damage equal to its attack, but this particular card right here deals damage to your opponent and recovers 200 of your life points every time they summon a monster. So on top of being a card that can search you either a starter or an extender depending on your hand, it's a card that can basically mitigate the neg of your Sprite Starter. So even if you go into time and you're getting close to time, this card makes your opponent play weirdly because they're not going to be able to summon too many monsters if they don't want to burn themselves to time. So yeah, this card gives the deck an advantage that the OG Sprite deck doesn't have, because in time, OG Sprite basically has to either side out or never use Sprite Starter, because if they do, they're going to lose while they're comboing off. We play 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More in the main deck. I've mentioned this again and again and again. This card is amazing in the main deck. The thing is, when you're playing against Sprite, you have to play against hand traps on top of their established board. So if you play Droplet in the main deck and you try to basically negate Toad and maybe even Sprite Elf or even a red or a carrot, you have to send 2 to 3 cards from your hand or field to the graveyard, and then by that time you're not going to have enough cards in your hand to basically play around the Ash Blossom or the Ghost Ogre that they have in their hand as well. So this is why Dark Ruler not only stops their entire board, but it leaves you enough resources in your hand in order to be able to play around the hand traps as well, because it's a format that is not very fully combo based, because again, against decks like Adamantipator or Dragonlink, usually you know what you're dealing with because you see the negates in front of you. They usually don't have hand traps in their hand, and even if they have mostly 1. But against Sprite, you're going to be basically relying on your opponent to have at least 1 hand trap, if not 2, every single game, because they play 12 to 15 hand traps, so this card leaves you with enough resources to be able to play around them as well. And we play 1 copy of Call by the Grave because it's an absurd broken card. For the extra deck, we have 2 copies of Gigantic Sprite, pretty standard. This is the MX Saber Invoker of the deck that makes the deck immune, basically Nibiru and other cards. Gets you any level 2 from the deck, really, really good. Becomes 3200 if it has a link material under it, and being able to use link monsters as Xyz material is really, really good because you can 2 plays with your Live Twins and then go into Evil Twins, be a bait negates, draw more cards, pop cards, and then go to this card and then get more value. The other Xyz monsters we play in the deck is the Zeus package, so we play 1 copy of Sky Cavalry Centauria to be able to run it into something, into Won't Die by Battle. Then we're going to summon Downer Magician on top of it, and after Downer we summon the 1 copy of Zeus, which is a really good going second card that can basically beat a lot of stuff. It's a really good way to be able to bait around stuff like backrow and things, because against Eldritch, when you know that your opponent is going to have at least 2 backrow to be able to disrupt you, and if one of them is a floodgate, then you need to bait it somehow before you commit to your board, because if you start summoning your Gigantic Sprite and you get skill drain midpoint, then you're going to lose a lot. So being able to summon Sky Cavalry first and check your opponent's backrow to see if they have anything really good is really good. This is why Zeus is really good in the deck. Now, for the Link monsters, we played 2 copies of Sprite Elf, pretty standard ratio. This is the card that revives your monsters and makes them untargetable if they're pointed by its link markers. Even without Toad, this card is amazing, being able to summon pretty much anything from the deck. Even without summoning a negate this card is really, really good, so you need to play 2. You can consider playing 1 in this particular version because you do summon a lot of other link monsters, so if you want to fit another card in the extra deck, maybe like a Unicorn Masquerena package, because you see that it comes up, then you can cut 1 copy of Sprite Earth because it's not as important as it is in the Frog version, but still it's a really important card nonetheless, just because you can bring back anything you want from the grave. For the Evil Twin package, we play 2 copies of Kisikil. She's the one that revives Lila from the grave, and when she's revived, when you have Lila, you basically get draw a card. We play 2 copies of Lila. This is the one that pops a card on the field when she's summoned, and you have Kisikil on the field, and once you have another monster, you can basically bring back a Kisikil if you don't control a Kisikil. So both of these work in tandem, and this is why I mentioned that tributing them for Red and Carrot's effect doesn't matter too much, because if you have both of them on the field and you haven't used their effects, you can freely tribute one of them. Not only are you going to bring it back, but you're also going to trigger its effect, so you plus by tributing the monster. So not only are you negating and destroying the effect you're negating with your 2 sprites, but you're also getting more advantage, and because this card pops a card on the field, you can very easily use Dagda to go into Scythe, and you know the rest. You Scythe like your opponent, and you basically win from there. We played 2 copies of Trouble Sunny. This card is going to become more popular, not just because of this deck, but because of Ultimate Slayer. People are going to play it in the extra deck for a link target, because you can basically banish it from the graveyard to send an Evil Twin monster from your hand, deck, or field to the grave, to send a card on your opponent's field to the grave. So the thing about this card is that people are playing the big Evil Twin monster in their main deck in order to do that, but if you're not playing Ultimate Slayer, there is not a point doing so, because you can easily send one of the link monsters from your field to the grave to send a card, and then you can revive it to get another plus. So if you're playing an Evil Twin deck that is not pure, then you don't really need to play the big monster. It's more of a brick than it helps, because you do have other targets for this card, and this card is the big beater of the deck because it's a 33k beater that you can summon very easily, and also you can tribute it, bring back both Kisikil and Lila from the graveyard, triggering both their effects at the same time. We play 1 copy of Dagda because we play Artifact Scythe. The deck spams enough so you can very easily bring this card out and lock your opponent for a turn. And we play 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed War. This card is here to mainly deal with decks like Marincess and Antignister, because the deck doesn't have easy out to unaffect big monsters, but it also has synergy with Evil Twins, because the Evil Twin link monsters lock you into Fiend monsters after you use their effects, but this card is a Fiend monster, so even if you are forced to use them to get more monsters on the field, then you can summon this card afterwards, even though you are locked, because this card is also a Fiend, so it doesn't matter too much. It's really handy to have it in the extra deck, just because you never know when you're going to run into this matchup, and if you don't have this card in your extra deck, you're going to struggle a lot. So yep, that's the deck, guys. It's another version of Sprites that you're not going to be seeing as often as the Frog version, but some people are still gonna play it, and it's a more fun version, at least for me. I like it a lot. I think it's a deck that is more resilient to the ban list. It doesn't rely on Toad that much, because you could play Frogs if you wanted to, but I don't feel like they're necessary, because the deck does have a similar playstyle but different win conditions on the Frog version of the deck. So yeah, if you want to mess around with this deck and put in the Frogs as well by cutting some hand traps, then you can go for it as well if you want to make the deck ceiling higher, but I feel like it's not necessary. The deck functions really well even without it, and it's basically a ban list proof version of the deck, because again, it doesn't play Toad, and even if Artifact Scythe gets banned, it's a win con that is good to have, but it's not necessary, so we wouldn't mind too much if we lost. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos, and we'll see you next time.